Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. See ebaymotors.com.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick, and we might both have some apologizing to do today.
I've already done my apology. If you checked out our Twitter at JMU Sports News, I did my apology the day up. I'm sorry. I've done it. I've done my piece. I do apologize. It was a pretty great apology on my end too, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, really heartfelt apology there. No tears, which was a little bit disappointing for me. I thought.
Oh, you wanted tears?
I thought you might break down. Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm not a breaking down type of guy, but I was honestly shocked that they made it. Like, all of the bracketologies had him out after the Sun Belt tournament. 2 losses to Georgia Southern kind of hurt their RPI chances. So I was preparing. I had been preparing up until the Sun Belt tournament what my apology was going to be. Right, of course. And then all these bracketologies don't have it. I'm like, oh no, all this great content I've dreamt up is going to go to waste. And then they made it into the Raleigh region.
Yeah, and I've got some gripes with some of these baseball bracketologies, right? Because JMU Baseball, they make a regional for the first time in 13 years with a impressive Sun Belt championship showing, which we'll get to in a second. But they're entering this D1 Baseball, Baseball America. They've all got them right on the bubble. They go 2-2 in Alabama with a win over the best team in the Sun Belt in Louisiana on a neutral, a win over a pretty solid ODU team, and their 2 losses to Georgia Southern on a neutral are plenty respectable. To go from like in the field or just the fringe, I saw one of them Baseball America maybe, or D1 had them on the next 4 out.
Yeah.
Another one had them out. So they somehow are winning these games, moving up to like a little more comfortably in the field. And then I don't think there were so many bid stealers that they would have slid down like 10 spots that they had them sliding. And then they ended up being wrong. Just truly astounding logic from the baseball bracketologists.
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a little bit. First, we want to let you guys know that BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. I will say, I don't blame the bracketologists as much as I do the committee, because it all makes no sense. Lamar had like the second most regular season wins. I think they went 46-15 this year. They got left out. A 1 game above 500 Florida team, they make it in. Maryland, who was like 10 spots higher than JMU in the RPI, they don't make the Big Ten tournament, and then therefore they don't have enough, I guess, cachet and enough of a resume to make it in, despite having a higher RPI than a majority of the teams. I believe they're in the late 30s in their RPI. I don't get what the committee really looks at in baseball to decide who makes it and who doesn't. I assume the reason that the 27 and 26 Florida Gators made it is because of a guy with the same first name as mine, Jack Caglione. I imagine that's why the Florida Gators made it, that, you know, they want to see him in the postseason, which makes sense, but it's all very interesting. It's all interesting how the committee breaks it down.
SEC with 11 bids. It seems like having some people in the room too from your school who are supposed to excuse themselves from the room, but maybe have a little say prior to that.
Yeah, ECU hosting over some other teams, and they're like AD is big time in the process. Yeah, that doesn't scream of conflict of interest.
Some questions there, but hey, the Dukes make it right for the first time in over a decade. I think as far as we're concerned, I would call it a successful season.
Big time successful season. That's why we're up here apologizing. We came in, we said for this 2-year contract extension that Marlon Eichenberry came into the year with, he needed to make a regional for us to feel at least a little comfortable about it. He hadn't had really any postseason success in his entire JMU or even VMI career. The
Right.
postseason success still kind of escaped him a little bit this year in the Sun Belt tournament, only winning 2 games. But, at this point, it's picking nits. They made the regional. That's all that matters. I will say there was a lot of people coming out once they made it that, shouting out Jeff Bourne for not firing Eichenberry, for giving him the opportunities because he is a quote unquote culture builder. They were saying that if COVID hadn't impacted, 2020, 2021, that he may have been making this a little earlier. I'm not entirely sure about all of that, but at the end of the day, JMU Baseball, they make their first regional since 2011. Eichenberry has built them up, and this might be his best overall team from pitching to hitting to fielding, every little thing in between. They finally do it.
Yeah, I'll gladly eat crow here, right? I'm happy that they made it. I think a lot of fans are, despite having those doubts. It wasn't quite as like convincing as some of the pro Eichenberry people had made it seem, right? Like they were very bubbly. They were one of the last 4 teams in the field, and people were kind of victory lapping after the Louisiana win, where I think if they lost
If they lost to ODU, they wouldn't have been in.
probably been out. Yeah. So I think people were maybe a little premature with some of those comments. I also am still not entirely sure that he's like the long-term solution. I think there's some questions there. But at the same time, this should help a lot in recruiting, right? I think the Sun Belt was one of only a handful, maybe fewer, maybe 4 conferences or something like that sent 4 more teams to the field. JMU has wins over Power 5 teams this year. You look at Arkansas, Virginia Tech, they've got some good wins. The Louisiana win is a really good one. They took 1 of 3 from Coastal. So they're doing some stuff in a good conference.
1 of 4 against Arkansas.
Yeah, they're doing some stuff where you could go as a recruit and want to actually play JMU baseball, which I don't think was true in the past and is even less so in the CAA these days, right? Charleston got left out. I think it was a 1-bid league this year, despite having probably teams that maybe deserve the field or to be in the field. So being in the Sun Belt is great. So Eichenberry has a lot of runway now for future seasons to really build on this. So it is exciting, I think, for him in the program.
Yeah, and he has 2 more years under contract, 25, 26. That 2-year extension didn't count for this year, so it begins next season. Next season is year 1 of his 2-year extension. Maybe with this, Matt Rohn decides to give him another extension, and I believe we FOIA'd Eichenberry's contract. There might be even a clause in it where if you make a regional, you get an extra year tacked on. We have to dive into that because Signetti had that clause in his contract. Chesney has that clause for football in his contract. Got to check if Eichenberry got that too, because that was a favorite clause of old Jeff Bourne.
Does love that clause. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, especially if they have a good run. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe Rohn gives Eichenberry another year. Maybe he wants to see what happens.
Another 1-year extension, another 2-year extension.
He's familiar with those, but it is exciting. And also one that was kind of, in my opinion, dead early during the Sun Belt Championship. I thought they were done because they lose to Georgia Southern 12-4 in that first game, and it really wasn't competitive. Kind of got smoked early. And they're getting crushed. They're down 7-1, I believe, through 2 innings. Yeah, 7-1 through 2 innings against Louisiana.
Yeah.
Before storming back to win 10-9. And then, like you had mentioned, I think the ODU win that next game was probably needed to get in as well. So they needed to not only erase a 7-1 deficit against the best team in the conference, they needed to do that and then win the following game just to be one of the last 4 in, and they did it, which is super impressive and I thought wildly shocking.
Yeah. Backtracking real quick to the Eichenberry contract, he does not get an extra year for making it into the NCAA regional. However, his bonus to go along with receiving a bid to the NCAA tournament, 1/2 of his monthly salary for getting a bid, 1/2 of his monthly salary for competing in the NCAA regional tournament. So with both of those things happening, he gets 1 month of salary as a bonus. And if they make it to the super regional, he gets 75% of his monthly salary, and he has an option to renegotiate his salary and contract terms if they make it to the super regional. So they're able to pull out a couple wins, then we might see an Eikenberry contract extension renegotiation come up.
He would probably be, in fairness to him, if they get to a super, at least deserving of like more pay, even if they don't extend him. Because his salary, if I'm not mistaken, it's like just over 100,000 or something. It's a pretty low salary, especially if you're taking a Sunbelt team to regionals.
I can't. Where would it? The university will pay the coach a base salary of $100,375 per year in semi-monthly installments.
So it's when I say just over, it's truly just over.
He is the lowest paid men's coach
outside of maybe tennis, right? Probably
tennis and golf. Good call. Good.
But like for any sport that people have watched,
sport,
like a casual JMU fan or even a diehard has watched, right? I bet there are a lot of diehard fans who haven't watched tennis or golf.
They're not on ESPN Plus,
so it makes it pretty tough. Yeah, I mean that's low. So he could certainly get some more money, but it's huge for them to get in. The way they got in was dramatic. They had a great season. The lineup's big time. The pitching is kind of hit or miss, but they found ways to scrap it together. And now they're in the Raleigh Regional, which should be, I think, an exciting little 4-team group.
Yeah, Bennett, you wrote a great regional preview over on JMUSportsnews.com. You can check it out and read what Bennett has to think about this regional. As it stands, JMU is the third favorite to win out of 4. So they made it in with NC State, who is red hot, rolling through the ACC.
Yeah.
Then you got, of course, South Carolina, who JMU is matched up with on Friday. And then you've got Bryant, the winner of is that the America East? Or the NEC? They're the NEC. So you got those 3 other teams in it. You got an ACC foe, an SEC foe, and then another mid-major team. That matchup with South Carolina, do you want to kind of dive into it now and do a little preview about JMU Gamecocks, and then we can kind of take a bigger picture and a bigger look at the Raleigh Regional? Because for all intents and purposes, they're going to be playing Bryant next, and the winner of that will face off the loser of the whole thing. You can look at the tournament breakdown. It's hard to explain via talk, but
it is.
So first game matters a lot. JMU South Carolina. You want to stay on the winner's side in this type of setup.
It's certainly ideal if you can stay on the winner's side. It becomes a massive advantage if you can get the first 2, which is hard.
Yes.
You were correct on Bryant initially, so they're American East for America East.
America East. There's no N on that. Please get it right.
Yeah. Excuse my apologies. America East. They dominated that league. Good for them. So they're in there. I think probably safe to kind of push them out in terms of winning the regional. I would not expect Bryant to win the regional.
You know what the funny thing is, though? South Carolina fan podcast is probably saying that right now and saying you can probably push out JMU and Bryant to win this regional.
I think if any team's the long shot that has some hope, it's probably the Dukes, given the schedule they played and how they played against some good teams. 7-1 or 7-1, 7-8 in quad 1 game. 7-1 would be nuts. Bubble team with 7-1 against quad 1. But they played well against some good teams, especially when the pitching just didn't get shelled. Like if they kept them in the game at all, they were competitive. So South Carolina, solid team. SEC has 11 bids. They're kind of just like one of the SEC teams, right? They're not one of the best SEC teams. There's a reason they're not hosting, but they are a solid team, good lineup. They got talented pitchers. I mean, any SEC team that makes the field and any SEC team in general is going to have a baseline level of ability, talent, like major league quality players. Like there's just going to be good players on their team. South Carolina is no exception, but this one is winnable. And I think the same thing with South Carolina and NC State. Both teams are outside the top 50 nationally in scoring, which gives me a little hope that they aren't like the tippy top best of the best offenses. Still pretty good offensively.
Yeah.
But JMU's pitching staff is going to need to step up. They're the only team in the Sun Belt that is in the top 4 in home runs hit and stolen bases. They lead the Sun Belt in batting average and slugging percentage, but they're 10th in team ERA, which we've seen kind of destroy them multiple times, right? So they needed that huge comeback just to beat Louisiana 10-9. They lost their first game of the Sun Belt championship 12-4 to Georgia Southern. They got shelled in that one. You look at their season, they have a lot of losses where they're giving up 10 plus runs, right? Where it's not like, oh, kind of a shaky showing from the pitching staff. No, they're getting clobbered.
Yeah.
You got to avoid that.
Yeah. This South Carolina lineup, though, is pretty good.
It's scary.
Like,
it's not as
they
scary
get
as
on
like a seed.
Yeah, but they get on base at a pretty good clip. They get on base at where is it? I had it already, and here it goes, leaving me. They get on base at a 394 clip as a team. Is this right? I'm on JMU.
On base percentage. I think I've got it.
I got it. I was on the wrong tab.
412.
I was on the wrong tab. Please bear with me. South Carolina gets on base at a 412 clip.
That's good.
They are first in the SEC, third in the nation, racking up 367 walks this year. They also get on base by being hit a lot.
They have taken a ton.
They get hit by pitch near the top of the nation. The one good thing, though, is JMU's pitching staff does only allow 4.3 walks per 9 innings, which is kind of middle of the pack Sun Belt, but top 80 in the nation. So hopefully that can go well with them. But I mean, that tells me South Carolina is patient at the dish. They're going to do everything to get on base. And they got some power in that lineup. Blake Jackson, transfer from Charlotte. He found a home in South Carolina and has been very good this season for the Gamecocks. Petrie is a fantastic player for them as well. It is interesting. Gavin Cassis, who was really hot during the SEC tournament and had kind of caught fire near the end of the season, he took a pitch off of the bottom of his hand, potentially broke his hand, and his status is questionable. It is doubtful he plays in the regional.
He's one of their 4 guys with 10 plus homers with Petrie and Messina both have 20 plus. So they've got some guys who can hit and they get on base at a high level. I think it's one where the pitching staff, if you're JMU, you're probably going to have to win some of these games scoring a bunch of runs. You just can't give up like the 10 plus run kind of performances they've had where they've gotten smacked. But if you give up somewhere in the 5 to 7 range, I think JMU could hang in the game at least.
Yeah, I think if you can make it through, and this is so much easier said than done, right? But if you can get through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe let's go 1 through 5, the batters in the South Carolina lineup without getting shelled by them, because that's where their power is. That's where their best hitters are. That's where their guys are that they get on base. If you can get through that part of the order, the bottom end of that Gamecocks order is not going to destroy you. But again, that is so much easier said than done when you're looking across to the other dugout. 2 guys over there with 20 plus home runs, a couple more sprinkled in with double-digit home runs. It's going to be 2 good offenses going at it. And like you said, it is going to be how does the pitching staff for JMU rise up to the challenge. This is a South Carolina pitching staff that should be able to kind of hold their own. They're a top 65 team in the nation in earned run average at 508. Not great, not terrible, better than JMU. So that will be an interesting thing to watch.
I think the other thing for me too is you made a good point about South Carolina's ability to get on base. JMU looked super nervous in the first game of the Sun Belt Championship. That first inning was wild. They had 4 walks, 3 of which came just on 4 pitches. They had a pass ball and a wild pitch. So, like, if you're handing South Carolina runs, it could be horrible. This is one where if you can have your pitching staff just keep you in it, you have enough guys that can hit and do stuff on the base pass to make things happen. They've got multiple guys with 10 plus home runs. JMU does. They have a pretty balanced lineup that has some guys that even for some SEC pitchers, I think can be matchup problems. So if they can hang in the game, I like their chances. It's one where I'm a little bit fearful of like the first 3 innings of the pitching just being really, really shaky and the game gets completely out of hand. Because I do think the South Carolina game is important for confidence, especially, right? If you can get that one and feel like you believe and belong, I think that helps a little bit. Also, JMU's a lot different than some of these other power teams where like I remember UVA, their head coach used to talk about it doesn't really matter if you don't win the first 2 games, like you're kind of end up in the losers bracket anyway. So he didn't care. I do think JMU beating South Carolina in a regional, even if they don't advance, would be like good for the program. Where for UVA, that's like contending for national championships doesn't really mean anything. But for JMU, I actually think that would be a solid step. So if they're able to clip South Carolina, it only helps in recruiting and only helps in the future. I think it would be a nice start to maybe future success.
Yeah, and who knows how it all shakes out. We didn't expect Louisiana to be in the losers bracket and to be the
Right.
second team that JMU faced in the Sun Belt tournament. If you stay on the winner's side of the bracket, you have no idea how things are going to break. Now, do I expect Bryant to beat a red hot NC State team? No.
Probably fair.
Yeah, that's the end of that one. But I mean, you just don't know how it's going to break. So you want to position yourself to the best of your ability to last as long as possible. Um, so that's really the Gamecocks. You're going to need good pitching. You're going to have to not give them men on base because they've got guys peppered throughout that lineup that can clean up the base paths with one swing of the bat. So got to keep it down. You got to hope that some of your big bats come alive with the bats of Fenwick Trimble, Brendan O'Donnell, Jason Schiavone. Can they kind of come up? Mike Mancini, Coleman Calabrese. Those are the 2 other guys with double-digit home runs. You just got to hope that your bats kind of rise up to that moment. You got a bunch of guys batting above 300. Can they consistently do it on this stage that JMU hasn't been on in 13 years?
Yeah, I think that's the scariest part is probably the pressure because they've put up some decent offensive outputs against good teams in the Sun Belt, some non-conference games. So if they can, stay within themselves, and you think in theory they should play freely, but there's also like, it's a little bit more pressure and it's a different stage once you're actually there playing in the game.
And this is coming from a non-athlete, but it's always so interesting to me in these types of scenarios where South Carolina is on national television, let's say once every other week. I more so think of this like with college basketball and the NCAA tournament. Like Terrence Edwards and TJ Bickerstaff are going up against all of these Duke players who have like national NIL brands and like are on national commercials now. Is there like a celebrity part of it that plays into it that kind of is off-putting? Maybe it adds a secondary edge to it. Who knows? Because I've never been a high-level athlete playing in one of these NCAA tournaments, of course. But that's always such an interesting wrinkle to me.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I think that'll be exciting. NC State's obviously really, really good if they end up facing them. They've got a bunch of guys. They're playing really well too.
NC State?
Yeah, of late, like the series they've won toward the end of the season were really impressive. I don't think they got out of their pool in the ACC championship, but one of their games was a 19-9 win over Virginia Tech, which was like a bubble team that JMU played right in a pretty competitive game. This year, they recently took a sweep against Wake Forest to close out their home, their home regular season series. And then the series before that, they won on the road a series at Virginia. I mean, these are
good teams.
Hosts, I believe, right? Yeah. So they're playing these teams really, really competitively good.
Wake's not a host.
They're not a host. Yeah, they got snubbed. But they're a really good team. So, I mean, to get those, it shows that they're playing pretty good baseball as of late. I don't think they're unbeatable, but those 2 teams, I think NC State and South Carolina, are kind of pretty clearly the top 2 favorites, and JMU is going to have a phenomenal weekend to advance.
Well, it's kind of funny. NC State comes in, they are the host. They're red hot as of late. And then South Carolina was one of the best teams in the entire nation to start the year. Yeah. 8-1 in February, 13-6 in March, and then just 1 game over 500 in the months of April and May. So it's like you got this NC State team that's the flip-flop of that. They've really found their rhythm late. And you got this South Carolina team who has the capability of being great, but they haven't really been able to play up to their potential these last 2 months. And then you got JMU, who's just been Peter along, and you got Bryant. But Bennett, how can JMU win this region? Is it going to take excellent pitching? Are they going to have to win 2-1 pitchers duels, or do you think they're going to have to rely on their big bats?
So in my written preview, I almost made the assumption that the bats were going to have to play well. and the pitching staff is just going to have to keep them in games. But I don't think there's any chance. Like, if the lineup is basically the reason they're in the regional, right?
Yeah.
Like, they've been good offensively all year. If they don't have that, I think it's over. I don't think they're good enough to win pitchers duels against Power 5 NCAA tournament teams, regional teams.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to have to pitch well, which I think for them might be like, hey, we gave up 6 runs to a good lineup, and then you're going to have to score a whole bunch. And yeah, obviously, if you get some breaks to go your way, like you mentioned, a Bryant over NC State, and you beat South Carolina, and then you're playing Bryant to stay in the winners bracket, like that'd be cool. So you need some stuff to go your way. But baseball is a funky enough sport that within a small sample size, you can get hot and make a run, especially in the super regional if you get in, right? Just 3 games. So we'll see. But I wouldn't expect them to win, but I think they have a chance if the pitching can step up a little bit to be competitive at least.
Yeah, and you have no idea what's going to happen with their arms.
Right.
The teams you're facing, you get into the back end of a bullpen real quick, and things can go downhill real fast.
Exactly. And the pressure, I think, can flip pretty quickly too, where if you're South Carolina and you had this great start and you went 13-17 in SEC play, a little bit disappointed there. If you find yourself down like 3-0 to JMU, you can get tight pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The same is true of NC State, even though they're at home. If you're losing to a team
that's even more so. You're down 3-0 in the 5th inning.
Start to press.
You're at home.
Yeah. So it's
in the losers bracket.
It can be fun. It can be interesting in these. So they've got a chance. I just don't think the pitching has been consistent enough this year for me to pick them to get out of a regional.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of showed up right in the Sun Belt Championship a bit.
Yeah. Georgia Southern took advantage of that. I got to ask you, how many games, not that they're going to win in the regional, how many games are they going to play in? Because my answer is 3.
I think I would agree with 3. I think the way I would see it playing out was lose to South Carolina, beat Bryant,
lose to South Carolina.
Probably lose to South Carolina again, or maybe NC State finds their way there. Yeah.
Be fun.
It should be fun. They haven't been one of these since we've done this, since we've been in school.
You started school in 2014?
2014.
I started in 2015, and they haven't made it since 2011. And if they make it to the Super Regional, first time since 1983 when they made the College World Series.
Yeah, for some reason I thought they had maybe won a different regional, but that's the only regional they've ever won was in 1983 to move forward. So it would be historic. But I think that kind of speaks to how it's just a good year already. Making a regional hasn't really been the standard.
Yeah.
So getting there and trying to create that as a standard is a great first step. And hey, if the bats get hot, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And this might be a snarky thing to say, but if JMU can pull out a win in the regional, that's 3 postseason wins for Marlon Eichenberry. Pretty sure 3 postseason wins are the most he's ever had as the head coach of JMU in a single postseason.
I think it would be. Yeah, it might even be the most going back to VMI.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go that far, but I think it is because he has a very severely under 500 postseason record.
And good for him. We've ragged on him and sort of their success for a while, but by all accounts, a great dude. And Mike Barber wrote that story. 33 years as a player and coach across various schools.
Yeah. Loves the Valley.
Now he's in a regional.
Good for him.
That's a long time.
That's longer than you've been alive.
33 years that is a long time, but to stay committed to the grind and to get a team, I think the funniest part for me is to take a team in the Sun Belt, right? He had JMU in the CAA, which may be a little bit easier to dominate that league perhaps, or VMI, maybe you get something going. To do it in the Sun Belt when you're picked to finish
in year 2
in the preseason. Yeah.
After no success in the CAA, year 2 of the Sun Belt, after overperforming expectations in year 1, then overperforming expectations in year 2 to find your way to a regional. Insane. Good stuff for him. He's a baller.
Good stuff. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. Anything I didn't prepare anything for football or anything like that, but if you want to talk football, I'm always down. You can talk basketball transfer real quick.
Yeah, basketball had a transfer, football had a running back, which was a little surprising. I'm interested in your take on that. But you want to start basketball or football?
Let's start basketball. You hit me first.
Basketball. So I think they have one scholarship left now, but they added Will Lovings Watts. Good name. A guard
Very good
from
name.
Northern Illinois, was on the All-MAC freshman team last year. He averaged 7.3 points and 4.1 rebounds per game in conference play in the MAC. 6'5". Seems like he could probably play for him. They're so much deeper than I thought they'd be.
But that means one scholarship is left, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I remember when we were trying to figure out what this rotation would look like with all the scholarships available, and we were like, they got Jarrell Roberson and Xavier Brown.
Everybody they added. So they added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 transfers and brought Brown back. Like all 10 of those guys could realistically play.
I'm so excited for November.
It seems like it's going to be a really good team.
I'm so excited for the non-conference schedule to come out. You see, Iowa State just released their 2024-25.
Really?
Yeah.
They're dropping already.
They're starting to drop. So I'm waiting for JMU's.
It'll be a good one. Yeah, I feel a lot better about the backcourt. They added Bryce Lindsey from Texas A&M, who's a really talented young player. Lovings Watts has some ability. And then, of course, Mark Freeman plus
Mark
Brown.
Freeman, baby.
That's a pretty darn good backcourt for them.
I'm super excited. Like it's going to be a great team.
It should be
football. Football running back?
Football running back. A little surprised here. Feels like they have a lot of running backs. But, hey. Nothing wrong with too many running backs. They added, I believe it's Joby Mallory, a running back from Portland State. He's like just under 6 feet tall, 225.
Big boy.
Yep, he's a big boy. Believe he's got 1 or 2 years. Can't fully remember how many years of eligibility.
It's 2 years, but he's a grad transfer. That's where it got confusing.
Yeah.
It was originally reported that he had a year of eligibility because he's a grad transfer, but per his own post, he has 2 years of eligibility.
Okay, we love that. I assume, and based off watching some of what he does, he's got the size. It could be a little bit of a more physical runner to go with Adai and Petaway.
Yeah.
But also very interesting. He averaged more than 6 yards per carry last year, running for over 600 yards. He joined Portland State as a walk-on and then earned a scholarship. So he could be like a short yardage guy. He also had a game against Eastern Washington last year. 23 carries, 241 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
What?
Yes. What? Like, that's just absurd. So, like, he had other games where he was getting, like, 4 carries. So I didn't do enough research to be like, was somebody else banged up that he was the guy who got the workload?
That's amazing.
Your one game is like the workhorse against, like, a well-known FCS team. You go for 10 plus yards of carry and 6 touchdowns. Like, that's like 25% of his carries in that game were touchdowns.
That's absurd. That's absurd. I'm excited.
Yeah. They seem really deep offensively at all the skill positions they added, right? They've added a bunch of receivers.
Oh, I don't think we've had a podcast since they added Ray Williams.
Ray Williams. Howard DB. They added a gazillion DBs in the spring portal. I think they added 4.
My favorite thing about the spring portal DBs that they added, they all are just listed as defensive backs, but like I think all of them are corners. But the fact that they list them as defensive backs, I'm like, okay, who are they going to try to convert to safety?
It has to be somebody, right?
Like, I feel like there's something to the fact that they're not being reported as cornerback transfers; they're being reported as defensive back. Yeah. So I got to imagine that Ray Williams was kind of like, you can come here, but you're either going to be CB3 or starting safety if you can pick up the safety. Like, I feel like that's the pitch they've been saying to all of these transfer corners.
I think so too. One of those, you got to think one of the guys.
I think Ray Williams has the ability.
So do I. I think he stood out more as a guy with like safety ability. You watch some of his tape and he's a little bit farther back too, and almost had him in a safety role at times at Howard. And when he's healthy, he was really, really good. He had one of his 2 interceptions last year came against Eastern Michigan, which is a bowl team from the MAC. And then he had a season high 8 tackles against Northwestern, some really good tackles in that game. Northwestern, I think, was also a Big Ten bowl team. So he's ready. He's good. And I like that they added some older guys in the secondary to go with some of that young talent, because they do have a lot of really good young DBs, but it's nice to be like, oh, this guy's played college football for like 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
But that's about it. I think we'll see what happens with baseball, and then we'll probably go into a slower summer here. It's been a full sports year for JMU, that's for sure.
Yeah. Before we get into listener questions, because we do have 2 listener questions,
Oh,
uh, keep up to date with all things happening on JMU Sports News with our website, www.jmusportsnews.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, JMU Sports News there. Keep it locked to our Twitter. Probably be updating with things happening along those lines in terms of when the podcast is, when it isn't in, when it isn't, when it isn't. There we go. And just kind of all things like that. Might be looking for some more contributors help as we continue
yeah.
to grow over this summer. And yeah, we have a lot of stuff up our sleeves this summer going into next football season. So super excited about that. Keep it locked on our website and everything like that. Are you ready for a couple listener questions? I'm going to throw 2. I'm going to throw one at you, and then 2 of them I think we got to break down together.
Okay, go for it.
All right, first one. It's from Joey Needham.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What do you think Spradlin does with the last scholarship? Hard to think it's another transfer and not a high school recruit in my eyes. Maybe a high school big?
That's a great question. I think they were looking at like a 6'8" guy from Texas in high school who I don't know if he's committed yet. So they might still have that scholarship open. But that would make a lot of sense, right? A developmental big to go behind your veteran big guys from power conference schools.
Yeah.
What do you think? You go high school, probably, right?
Yeah, I've heard reports that they've been kind of courting a few high school players that they're trying to get signed. So maybe one of them is they expect him to come through in the coming days. I doubt they go with another, unless you get like a redshirt freshman who still has 4 years of eligibility or even 3 years of eligibility, like a young guy. I just don't see some of these guys that they brought in, like a Bryce Lindsey. I don't see him breaking into the lineup and getting a ton of minutes right now.
Like he's going to have his work cut out. Yeah.
You got Mark Freeman and you got Xavier Brown in front of him. AJ Smith is there. Like they're deep at guard. They're deep at forward. So I would be shocked if they brought in like a 1-year eligibility guy.
Yeah. Long-term project probably makes a little bit of sense. And then they also added the guy with pretty good size, sort of as a wing, I think 6'7" as a walk-on, who was at Morehead State, but was at IMG Academy. He's not going to play.
Oh,
I'm just saying, like, in terms of like developmental projects, they honestly could use the scholarship, even though it does sound like they're going to go with a high school guy. They could honestly just toss it to like a walk-on for this 1 year. Like they're so deep.
Yeah, Jarrell Pope could get it if he's decided to come back. Holden Smith.
Just not worried about that final scholarship, really.
All right. Daniel Merriman, what team other than JMU are you building a dynasty for in college football 25? I got my answer locked and loaded. You ready for it?
Yeah, hit me.
App State, and I'm running them into the ground.
That's a great answer. I would go with Toledo.
Why?
Maction team. The Rocket logo is cool. I just like them.
And the way you said it was like so matter of fact. Toledo.
They were my gut instinct.
Okay. Akron.
I was reading they've done a better job, though, of making it like clear when your team sucks compared to the previous version. Matt Brown was reporting that like if there's a talent differential, like it's going to show up even more than it did in the old game. Where in the old game, you could take like Army, play Ohio State on a high level and ball control them, go for it on 4th down and hang. It sounds like that's going to be even harder. Like if you don't have the dudes, like it's going to show up more, which is a little bit scary for somebody who likes to play on the road without the dudes.
Is that you? You like to go into the big house and try and pull the
I would love to do like Miami, Ohio taking on Michigan. I do like the conservative clock thing, and I'm snapping the ball with 1 second on the play clock, like in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And we're just running. We're trying to make it like a true 2-possession game.
I've done that before in Madden, where I've tried just to have the ball twice.
Yeah.
Always fun.
It is
super fun. Are you more of a road to glory or dynasty guy?
I'm more of a dynasty guy myself.
See, I'm more road to glory.
Okay, what do you like about road to glory?
I just like putting myself in the game and making myself be really good at football.
What position?
Quarterback.
Okay.
But I'm a dual threat quarterback who runs for 200 yards and throws for 100.
Okay, the quarterback one is definitely fun. I've enjoyed those. Have you ever done it with like receiver?
I did. Do you remember the Madden like 05, 06 when you could like do like
Yeah.
eugenics?
Yeah.
I once did a wide receiver for that and got to the Hall of Fame with a wide receiver. Never did it for Road to Glory.
Yeah,
I would do running back.
Road to Glory would piss me off. It'd be like high school with a receiver,
And
and
you're
you'd
like
go for like
6'7", 210.
yeah,
You're
you're
like,
like
why aren't you throwing me the ball every time?
you'd go for like 8 catches for like 180 and like 3 scores. But there'd be plays where you just cook the guy off the line, and they're going to like some tight end who's gonna be an accountant in 5 years. And it's like, "What are you doing?" That
Come
was
to me.
yeah, that's where if you're quarterback, like, they would let you audible and stuff. You'd be
Yes.
like, "Oh, it's a run." It's like, "Yo, fuck you, coach. No, it's not."
Sometimes if you got like high enough with your running back, you could audible. So I would just like it would finish the game like 50 carries, 500 yards, and you're like, hell yeah, this is why I do it.
I was also reading, I don't know if this is gonna be true for Road to Glory, but for Dynasty and stuff, like, if your quarterback is, like, repeatedly taking hits to the legs or something, but
He's
doesn't
gonna
get
break his leg.
no, but doesn't get injured, like, he's gonna be worse at scrambling. Like, they're trying to make it more like, fatigue and depth and stuff, and, like, play now probably won't kill you, but in
Huh.
Dynasty, you might like, you gotta have to have a deep roster.
Interesting. Now, why can't they do this for Madden?
That's what doesn't make sense, is that, like, Madden, sometimes the gameplay is just absolute trash, and
The
they're like
Madden gameplay is well, they changed. This is getting way too nerdy here at the end of the podcast. If you've stuck out with us this far, welcome to the nerdy side of video games. I heard that Madden switched their engine
mhm.
like 5, 6, 7 years ago from a actual like what could happen to an animation. So
Uh,
if you try to break a tackle instead of like what when you put your juke on at what point of the opponent's tackle, when you put the juke on, it just depends on which animation you get for if you're going to break the tackle or not.
oh.
And I'm like, well, that's stupid. So like sometimes your big hits look bigger, like your hit stick looks bigger because like that's the animation it picked.
That's really funny.
And it's like, okay, so there's like no skill. It's just like you're rolling a die every single time you're trying to do something.
I do wanna see the college game before I, like, buy into all that, like, where they're, like, telling the media, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're gonna need depth because this game is so advanced." Like, is it though? Like, could you
I'm
be
gonna
in
be
week yeah.
I'm gonna be waiting until it's week 9 and I'm down to my fourth string quarterback and be like, fuck, I need depth.
That'll be fun, yeah. If it gets to, like, week 8 and your running back is, like, doesn't have the same juice or something, you gotta limit his carries, then, like, alright, hats off. But if I'm still just pounding, if I'm running triple option with Army and I've got, my fullback taking 35 plus carries a game and he's still good, then you were just lying to the media.
I will say FIFA does that a good job with like
Yeah,
stamina and things like that. So I imagine if they can just take that
yeah.
and put it towards this, it makes sense. Like if you're playing FIFA and you have 2 games in a week, you have to adjust your starting lineup because you want to favor the better opponent. So you got to bench some of your starters so that they have more stamina. So
And I think I read that, like, if you're the coach or whatever in the dynasty, like, I think you could fire assistants and stuff, like, it might be
now,
really
why would you need to do that?
that would be sick to just be
That's
like,
your own problem. You just
"My
need to
D
fire
co
yourself.
my
My
D
defensive
coordinator."
coordinator called engage 8. Coach, you're the defensive coordinator. Fire him. Get him out of here.
I hope it's just absolutely nuts. I also hope they add some, like, just nonsense quirks about, like, the portal. I wanna have recruits spurning me at the last second, blowing me off, even though they've been committed to me for months because their dream school came in.
What if you could sign a kid, like get his signature, like, and then give him his money, and then he leaves and you lose that money?
That would be sweet.
Like he literally burns you, like,
I revoke offers? I want that to be something. I wanna be able to offer kids
and then
and then
destroy
leave
their
leave
dreams.
them, yeah, in the dust.
What about okay, when you do Dynasty, do you pick JMU?
I probably would for at least one of the dynasties.
Oh, one of them. You're a multi-dynasty guy.
Well, usually I roll through and I do, like, 3 seasons, and then I get super bored, and then I just pick another team, and
Same.
yeah.
People who do Dynasty for the entirety of the Dynasty run, sickos,
Is there an
crazy
end? Does
people.
it end?
I think it's 30 seasons.
Oh my god, I didn't know it ended.
I've never gotten there.
I've never gotten close. But yeah, I love like the recruiting, and you could try to get 5-star kids. But the worst part is I would get like a 5-star. I'd be Houston before Houston moved up, running an air raid, killing it. I remember getting some 5-star kids, like 5-star quarterbacks, get them on your roster, and they've got them listed at like 78 overall. What recruiting service was I listening to that told me he was a 5-star? He's like QB4.
That sounds great for a freshman.
No, I don't want to develop the 5-star. I'm trying to get a prodigy.
Oh, you want Arch Manning in here?
Well, I guess he's developing. He's not even a prodigy. So maybe that's why I didn't get any prodigies.
Well, anything else you got to add?
No, I think that's it.
What about like a 5-star running back?
5-star running back, they should have just be good immediately, right?
I don't know.
I don't pay enough attention to the 5-star recruits because JMU's never like even spoken to them. So I think, I just assume that like anyone running the ball for Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, Florida State, Georgia, freshman. Alabama are just 5-star kids. Like if you're like a junior running the ball for Alabama, I assume at one point you were a 5-star.
Well, that's a great way to end this podcast. I'm Bennett Collin. I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning into the JMU Sports News podcast presented by Bet Online. We'll talk to you guys sometime in the future. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.